jacket is a very unusual jacket. This was made by a designer named Sai Chan. And it's interesting, he made this jacket. I don't know if you look at it, it's a big puffy green bark with 4 sets of stuffed clasped hands that wrap around from the back to the front. And they asked him, why did you make this jacket? And he said, because everyone needs to be loved, everyone needs to be hugged. And so he makes this jacket, a man can wear it, and it's, you got 1, 2, 3, you got 4 people hugging you. He said, but his main goal was to eliminate loneliness. I don't know, but I don't think you can really hug yourself to help. I don't know if that really works. You put that on, I don't think you feel any different. It's just I don't know. I'm not going to buy one. But the reality is we need something besides ourselves. And man's garments, you think about man's garments, they don't dispel despair, they don't soften sorrow, they don't lessen any loneliness. But the garments really made by God's grace can, and those garments I thought about is companionship with God, fellowship with God, and fellowship with each other. Loneliness is not taken away just simply by wearing that jacket. It's those two things I will emphasize over and over again. It's our need for fellowship with God. It's our need for fellowship one with another. But not just fellowship. It has to be deeper than that. It has to go deeper than that. It's not just a casual friendship, but it's deep fellowship, because it's that deep fellowship that's going to make all the difference in the world, in your life. It can be a wife. It can be a husband that is your deepest friend. It can be a close brother in the church. But no matter who you are, having a relationship with God alone and having no friends is no way to live. In fact, there will be a dimension in your life that is lacking. Unless you have somebody that's there. The Bible says in Genesis 2:18, the Lord God said, it's not good that man should be alone. And then he gives him a wife. Matthew 11:28, come unto me, all you labor, heavy laden, overburdened, I'll cause you to rest. I will ease and relieve and refresh your souls. I mean, only God can do that. Yeah. Then Isaiah, he says, but thus says the Lord God who created you, O Jacob, and he that formed you, O Israel, fear not, for I redeemed thee. I have called you by name, you are mine. That's what every one of us need. But the man's goal was obviously to eliminate loneliness. You can't eliminate loneliness by just simply putting on a jacket. It's more than that. So this morning I want to preach. It's in the same scripture, but I'm going to go a little different way this morning. Quite a bit different, I think. It's choosing connection and being resilient, or resiliency. And it's found in Matthew 26, verse 37. We've read this every week for the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks. The Bible says, taking along Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, he plunged into agonizing sorrow. I'll come back to that throughout the sermon, but here Jesus Christ gives you an example. He gives us an example when our life can overwhelm us, or when we are overwhelmed by life, or what may be happening in our life. In an overwhelming crisis, he gives us an example of what we should do if we're going to survive it. And it's the word resiliency. It's resilient living. When Alvin Smith was here, he's in the truck one day, and I didn't really think about this. I had been reading about it, but I hadn't really thought much about it. In this sense, he said, he looked at me and says, resilient, brother. And I said, well, I don't know about that, Alvin. I'm just trying to survive and keep moving forward. And he said, no, you're not trying to do it, you're doing it. He says, you are very, very resilient. And I got happy. Yeah, but anyway, so you think about resiliency. And as I was reading through, it's interesting that they say there are 3 interacting factors to our happiness in our life. One is genes, which most of us, we don't choose our genes, our genetic background, or predispositions. We have nothing to control over that, our parents. It's our genes, number 1. Number 2, it's They say it's the world that happens around you. It's the stuff that happens in your life that you have no control over, that's done by someone else. Circumstances, we don't control the stuff that happens in our world in that sense. And so they say it's your genes, circumstances of life. But then also the third one, they say, which is big, it's the words. You can choose your words, and you can choose your attitude. And you can choose your actions. Yep. Some of the things I read, it said those two first and the last are 50-50, 50%. 50% equals your happiness. One article I read said 40% is the first two, the genes and your world around you. And 60% of your life's happiness and ability to survive is going to be based on your attitude, your actions, and your words. So I thought it's interesting for us. So you think about resilience. Here's the definition. The power or the ability to return to original form after being bent, compressed, or stretched. Let me stop there just for a moment. Stretched. I think all of us have been stretched one time or another. Some of us even right now are being stretched by life. But it's also the ability to recover from an illness, depression, adversity, buoyancy to rebound. One man said, resilience is the core strength you use to lift the load of life. It's resiliency that gives you the ability to face adversity, face affliction, face problems, face things you did not plan on facing, and it gives you the ability to bounce back in life. Not just be bent, not collapse, but be able to bounce back. And hopefully we all can live a life that's resilient. We have some resiliency to our life. We're able to overcome obstacles and heartache and pain, but be able to make it back. And that's what we want. So they did a study, me and my studies, right? But they did a study on resilient people. This is dealing with thousands of people. And these are the traits they found in people that are resilient. Emotionally strong, are grateful for life's little and larger blessings, are gracious in forgiving others, live with a life of purpose, slow to judge, they live for others, they are kind, gentle, and patient. And this is one of the biggest ones they said is they are compassionate even in the midst of personal stress. And that's when you find out really what you're made out of. Yeah, right. And the last one is they often have a strong anchor of faith. Amen. So you think about resilient people. And what Jesus does, when I read this, it really did speak to me, because he does something that, we don't think much about, but there's something here in that one verse. But when you talk about surviving or thriving, what Jesus does is not just surviving life, but it's thriving. But here's the reality. When you and I sometimes in our life, we are just surviving. We've all been there. I don't know about this, like I told Alan. I don't know about that, Alan. I'm just trying to survive and make it through and keep moving forward. Well, the reality is when you're in that mode, I'm just in survival mode, you're not thinking about thriving. You're just trying to make it. Right? Surviving, the word came from a legal term used to describe when someone died in a family, a wife or a husband, and the guy would live after that death. So that's where the word came from. So you survive after someone died. Well, sometimes it's someone who dies is us. And we're just trying to survive what's happening in our own life. We're trying to make it through what's happening in our own life. But it's the ability to survive. It means to go beyond the death of something, to go beyond the death of your health or death of your whatever it might be, able to survive. But when you're in survival mode, you're not thinking about thriving. Everything else goes out the door. I'm just trying to survive. I just got to survive. Well, but Jesus does more than just survive. He thrives. And there's something here for all of us. Matthew 26, verse 37. And taking with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, he began to show grief and distress of mind and was deeply depressed. The word taking means to take in. It means to take to oneself. It means to join oneself It means to receive near, like having someone to associate with you, but in a very, very intimate way or relationship. Jesus knows what's about to happen. We can't relate to this, but he chooses to be connected. He's choosing to be connected. And the reality, he's choosing the very unnatural course for most people. He does what naturally we all shy away from. And what we all shy away from naturally is when you and I are in a personal crisis, or you and I are in a place that we are overwhelmed, we draw away from people instead of take people with us.
Right. Yeah.
It's interesting because as you read it, you see he takes the disciples with him, and then he began to be in sorrow. And knowing that he's God, yet he's man, he understands, I'm about to hit a place that I'm going to need someone there with me. In other words, I'm going to survive this, but I'm going to survive. I know what I need. He's God in the flesh. And he says, and taking, I want someone to come with me. I want someone to be close to me. I want someone right there with me. When I go into this and I'll survive, I'll make it through it. I'm not going into this just in God alone. I'm going into this because I need God, and also I need people. It's the ability to be connected to people when you are in crisis, and as you develop and have these friendships, it's those things. Taking people with you is what gives you the ability to survive.
Yeah.
And so you think about loneliness. This guy says, I'm going to create this jacket people will wear, and it's going to dispel loneliness. Most people that are lonely probably can afford that jacket. Designer jacket, billion, only God knows how much money. But it's interesting because people can be, here's the problem, because we have so much technology today, people can be really, really lonely and yet have all kinds of social connections. And no doubt some of you say, Pastor, I'm not lonely, Pastor. I'm not, this is more of an informational sermon, but hopefully it helps some of you, it help me, but is this. You may say, come on, Pastor, I got all kinds of friends on Facebook.
Right.
But what are you talking about lonely? I ain't lonely, man. I'm connected, man. I got so many, I got this, all my friends, so I got Instagram, I got Twitter, I got Facebook, man. I'm hooked up. Oh, really? The more connections you have like that and you use them, the more lonelier you are. There's a reason for it. Because loneliness is often related to the lack of meaningful relationships that people have with real people that are really in someone's life. We've accepted being some things that I talked about on a Thursday night in God Talks, but this is what can happen. This is what's happening. We sacrifice conversation for mere connection. Just connected to someone via Facebook, whatever. Connected, I'm cool. There's no conversation or very, very little. The Bible says in Proverbs 27:10, a part of it says, better is a nearby friend than a distant family member. The average Facebook user today, since you brought up Facebook, has 338 friends. Less than half of them have about 200 friends. 15% of them have 500 friends. Think about this. When I shared this at God Talks back in 2009, the average user then only had 120 friends. But when they studied those relationships, like I said on a Thursday, they actually found out those people that had a two-way conversation with somebody, real people, was 4 to 5 people, not over 6. The average is about 3 people out of 120, 3 people they might be talking to. 3. Technologies that will give us the illusion of companionship without the demands of friendship. And how many know that real friendships are demanding? They take time. It costs to develop relationships. It takes time. And how many know it's a hassle? You deal with real people. Man, real people got real problems. And so do us. We all have them. So I'd rather not deal with someone. I just click them, friend or no friend, unfriend. I just do it that way, and that's fine. But to have real relationships with real people to talk to, and they talk to you, and you begin to know each other, begin to trust each other. As time goes on, you trust each other a little bit more. You open your heart up a little bit more. You begin to share things. Those things, you may not realize, those are very, very healthy. But yes, it is demanding. And yes, it costs. It takes time. Absolutely. As opposed to Facebook friends. And so you think about Facebook and their friendships. I thought this was interesting, preparing for the Thursday night services, that Facebook people, they ask, okay, you got all these friends. You got all these friends. Close friends, right? There's your bro. You got 338 friends, man. You're like the most popular guy on Facebook. Hardly, but anyway, you got how they can ask them this question. General statement, not technically, not down the wire, but it's a general statement, generally to be true. So you got 338 friends. What percentage of your friends would you have those friends? Would you have over to your house, introduce them to your wife, your kids, or your grandkids, and maybe if they're really, really tired, they say, hey man, just crash on my couch. 95% of them said they would never do that. Why? That's your friends. They had your back. They're your buds. They're your friends, Facebook friends. Well, not really. They said most of them would never have them in their house. It's crazy. You would never have them in your house, but you have them in your life. I know here's how we do it. A friend of a friend of a friend of a friend knows one of your friends that you used to know. So you're going to associate with a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend? Click. I know your friend's friend before he died. It's just like all this down. No one really, this talk and friend, it's not there. I tell you, the reason why I know it's not there because you never have them come over to your house. Right. Spend the evening with you and your kids. Play with your grandkids. You say, hey, never! And it's interesting, the people that are deceived the most to believe that those relationships are real and they're good people are teenagers. They say teenagers are the most susceptible of any group out there. They will converse with an absolute total stranger in an intimate way. They said that's why teenagers end up in so much trouble. I mean, think about it. I mean, let's get real. Someone's looking at your page, you send a picture, and I like your picture. How long did it take to do that? About a second? Tight, man! Guys say I like my picture. I post it, and 1 second later, boom, I like it. It's my friend, man. We're close. He's got my back. You go eat somewhere, this is where I'm eating. I love that kind of food too. See, it's all over. I got friends all over. Just all over. I got all these comments. I got 2 comments. I got all these comments. We exaggerate everything anyway. I got all these comments coming back and all these friends and just a big party. In reality, there are no friends. And then you're not that close to anyone. And you never have them over to your house. So what do you have? Well, hopefully, we have relationships with real people. Look at Jesus. He's choosing to be connected in his crisis. And people often disconnect in crisis. I know Jesus didn't have Facebook or Instagram. He had Dotagram. I just thought of that wrong. Okay. So, no, he didn't have that. But he chooses, listen, he knows it's coming ahead. He's God in the flesh, and yet he still understands something that we need to understand. You know what? I need to take Peter, the 2 sons of Zebedee. You guys come with and take him. I want you guys close to me. I'm about to enter something. I need you. Right. And we think we can get by with all these connections that aren't very real, deep connections at all. And we think we can survive without God or survive without each other. One man, I can do it myself. One man army. I don't think so. All those bumper stickers, I'm a one-man army. Drop you anywhere and you die in a heartbeat. One-man army. Give me a break. So normally what people do, or often what people do, and that's what I'm talking about, is when you and I enter this place of being overwhelmed, for whatever the reasons, the odds are against us surviving if we begin to drift away from our husband or our wife or our close friends, and we begin to drift away to no man's land, and we're left with only ourselves. You're left left to yourself in your own mind, that's a dangerous place to be. Because the only person you're talking to is you. Right. It can be a very dangerous place. Back in 214, Robin Williams, a comedian, died. And his third wife wrote a personal essay about what she experienced. Here's a part of it, which the title says, "The Terrorist Inside My Husband's Brain." His third wife, said, "My husband struggled with Lewy body dementia, with some big diagnosis, Parkinson's disease, 2 months after his death, which ultimately led to his suicide in August of 214. Quote, I feel like he was drowning in his symptoms and I was drowning along with him. His symptoms include insomnia, paranoia, anxiety, impaired thinking, and memory loss." Listen to this. "Robin was losing his mind and he was aware of it." And she says, "Can you imagine the pain he felt as he experienced himself disintegrating? And he would die from something that he didn't even know the name of or even understand." And she goes on, just talks about all the battles that are inside here. When you and I are left to ourselves, because of whatever the reason, there are things we face here. There are brain battles. We don't realize this about loneliness, what it can do to us, how it can change us. Because I don't think we look at some of these things in the proper light. So I want you to think about something for the last few minutes about the sermon that maybe you haven't thought much about. That's mental health. Like loneliness, depression, rejection. I have two that I will briefly speak about is depression and loneliness. Now I want you to think about it this way, which you probably have not thought about it this way at all. There's all kinds of misconceptions about depression. I posted this on Instagram. But one is just being sad. When people say, well, depression is being sad. You lose a loved one, a business goes bad, something happens, people let you down, you're sad. But that's normal, natural sadness. That's human sadness. That's what humans do. We have relationships, someone dies, we miss them, we're sad. That's not depression. Depression is not when everything is going bad in your life. Depression is when everything is going right in your life and you're still depressed. A young man who's battling depression wrote that. Almost took his life, but got out of it. But that's something he said. And so you think about depression. It's a very, very serious problem. Every 30 seconds, someplace in this world, someone takes their life because of depression. And it doesn't really matter if they're, 2 blocks away from here, 2 continents away from here, 2 countries away, or whatever. It doesn't matter. But every 30 seconds, someone's going to take their life because they are depressed. And one of the factors in depression is the inability to get out of your mind and able to have someone you're taking along with you, a very close friend there that's not there. Sometimes people go in that's in depression, they put them in what they call talk therapy, which provides for some people, it's absolutely life-saving. You just have to talk to someone. So every 30 seconds, someone's going to take their life because they're depressed, and part of that is because they're not connected. And often people that are depressed will say this, I have no one to talk to. But someone suffering from depression, and this is really crazy, what they fear the most isn't the depression. What they fear the most is the stigma that they get from other people. It's the shame, it's the embarrassment, it's the disapproving look from a friend's face. It's things that people will say to them if you're depressed, you're weak, you're crazy. And they say it's because of those comments by society and by people and by Christians and just all in your head, whatever it might be. The stigma that goes with it, because of that stigma is so bad, they'd rather not ever say nothing to anyone about it. Because they don't say anything to anyone, they can't get help. You can't get help unless you've got to get help, but you've got to realize I need help. But they won't get help because they don't get help. It's very, very damaging. And the only reason why they don't get help because of what people will say to them or will have said to them. And the reality is we have a wrong understanding of it. It's not how we should really look at it. 25% of people in the world right now, depends on where you go, but it can be more, have no one to confide in. Not one person. I told you on Thursday or last Sunday, my new girlfriend's Loma Linda. She actually gave me a hickey last week. Just kidding. Some of you go, I didn't know Pastor had a girlfriend. It's a hospital called Loma Linda. It's a medical place. It's not a real person named Loma Linda. But I went there, I saw this naturopathic doctor sitting there. I didn't know much about him. I saw him there. This just shows you how we're biased or how we're not that sharp. I'm talking about myself, about these type of things. And I'll give you this is the illustration. So I see this naturopathic doctor, and I look at him, and I'm thinking, you think these thoughts. What does that naturopathic doctor do? Or what is, probably, I don't know. I mean, he probably just burns it, essential oils all day and eats bark. I don't know. But I'm thinking he's not like a real doctor. He's not like a real doctor. You know what I mean? And so I start talking to the guy, and the guy's brilliant. So I went home and Googled it. and I read up on, those guys they go to school, they go through a lot of school, they go to doctor's school, they learn a lot they're very, very sharp. But in my mind, you're not a real doctor. You're not a real doctor. You put that on your card, I'm not a real doctor, stupid. But they say the same way as a psychologist or psychiatrist, especially psychologists. Psychologists will go through all the same medical training, almost all the same, plus more. And people think the same thing about a psychologist. Not a real doctor. Why? Because it deals with the brain. It's the bias over the brain over the body. But think about this. It's the favoritism we show the body over the brain, and like I said, we basically see it everywhere. You got grandkids, I got grandkids, but any kid, young age, doesn't matter their age, they can be really young, 3, 4 years old, 5 years old, they get a cut, they get a scrape. What do? They know they should show it to Nana, right? Show it to Tata, Ganawi. It's cut, they know it needs to be cleaned or maybe covered, or they get a Band-Aid. They say, get a Band-Aid, put a Band-Aid over it. They know that. How do they know that? They know, who's taught them first aid? How many classes of first aid did you go to? The kids don't go to first aid classes, but they instinctively know it's a cut, it's a wound, it needs to be treated and taken care of and covered. Okay. Well, what about our mental health? What about things like loneliness and depression, emotional health? And how is it that we can spend more time taking care of our teeth than we take care of our minds? And here's what I really say. Why is it so much more important that our physical health is so much more important than our mental health? And yet we sustain emotional injuries a lot more often than we do physical ones. Like I said, failure, rejection, depression, and loneliness. Which only get worse if they're never treated. And we have scientific methods, not just, weird stuff. We have scientific methods on how to deal with people that are lonely or depressed. They're there. We know how to do it, but we don't take advantage of them. Because society still looks at people with any of those things. There's something really wrong with you. You're weak. You're crazy. You're a head trip. Because that's how we look at it. People that really need help never get help. You think about it like this. Someone's feeling depressed. What does someone say? Or heartbroken. I use the term dark inside. And you say, well, you know what, man? Shake it off. It's all in your head. Shake it off. It's all in my head, huh? Well, can you imagine telling someone that with a broken leg? Shake it off. It's all in your leg. You got a broken leg? Yeah, shake it off. It's all in your leg. That's the bias that we have. This guy, him and his brother were studying. They were psychologists. They became psychologists, but while they're still studying, they grew up together. They were always together. And finally they had to depart. He went to London, England, to finish finishing his studies. His brother stayed here with his family. And we pick up the story of these two guys. Listen to this. While we remained among family and friends, while he remained among family and friends, I was alone in a new country. We missed each other terribly. They had never been apart forever, their whole life. But international phone calls were very expensive then, and we could only afford to speak 5 minutes each week. When our birthday rolled around, it was the first time we'd spend together. We decided to splurge, and that week we would talk for 10 minutes. Listen to this. He's in London. His brother shared the stage with his family, but they're separated. He's waiting for the phone call. I spent that morning pacing around my room, waiting for him to call me, waiting and waiting and waiting, but the phone didn't ring. Given the difference in time, I assumed, well, maybe he's out with friends, he'll call me later, but there were no cell phones back then, but he didn't call. Now I began to realize that after being away for 10 months, he no longer missed me the way he used to miss me. I knew he would call in the morning, but that night was one of the saddest and longest nights in my life. I woke up the next morning, I glanced down at the phone, and I realized that I had knocked off the receiver off the hook when I was pacing the day before. I stumbled out of bed, I put the phone back on the hook, and seconds later it rang. It was my brother. And he was very, very upset. He said it was the saddest moment in his life too. That night was the saddest moment in his life as well. And he said, and I tried to explain what happened. He said, I don't understand. You saw I wasn't calling you. Why didn't you pick up the phone and call me? And he said, he was right. Why didn't I? He said, I didn't have the answer then. He said, but I have the answer years later, looking back. I studied this stuff. It's called, he said, it's one word, it's the word loneliness. Loneliness. I'll come back to that thought. Listen to this about loneliness. It can happen to people with many, in fact, it does often with many, many social connections. The feeling of loneliness can inflict serious damage on our physical and emotional health. Infants whose biological needs are met but are left alone, no one to talk to, don't survive. Children that are growing up, if they are not talked to, they will develop depression, delinquency, and learning disabilities. This is crazy. When our mind is locked alone inside, we feel vulnerable and unavailable for any deeper, real commitment or connections. When we're in that state, we feel like we're facing the world, facing it all alone. The load that we have, we're facing it all alone. It says, we are biologically designed to be nourished by connections, just as hunger and thirst protect us, howbeit unpleasant feelings. The painful feeling of loneliness is a signal, alerts us that our physical and emotional vulnerability. Loneliness creates a deep wounds in our minds, listen to this one, that distorts our perceptions and scrambles our thinking. Absolutely. It distorts your perceptions and scrambles your thinking. What it makes you do when you are all alone without these vital connections, it makes you believe that people that are around you who really love you, you really begin to think they don't even care. Interesting. Second thing it really does, it makes you afraid to reach out because you don't want to reach out. You've already been hurt. You don't need any more hurt in your life. That's how you look at it. And there's a lot of research about loneliness that's actually pretty horrifying. Loneliness won't just make you miserable, but it can kill you. And I'm not kidding, it can kill you. Listen to this. I'm almost finished. Chronic loneliness will likelihood of an early death by 14%. Will increase your likelihood of an early death by 14%. Loneliness will cause high blood pressure, high cholesterol. Adults who feel lonely have a higher risk of depression, addiction, suicide, weight gain, hypertension, heart attack, and stroke. It even suppresses the function of our immune system, making it vulnerable to all kinds of illnesses and diseases. In fact, scientists have concluded that taken together, chronic loneliness possesses a significant at risk on your long-term health and longevity of your life as cigarette smoking. But last I checked, cigarette, at least cigarette smoking comes with a warning. This can kill you.
Right.
But loneliness doesn't. And that's why I'm saying I think we need to think about our mental health, emotional. I think it's very, very important because, listen, people who got wounds that need to be healed, they need help. We got to be willing to understand, these are real hurt. These are real things. It's not just all in their head and they ain't weak.
Right.
If they can't feel like they can't say it, you have to have that connection. You have to have that friend where you can say those things. And so going back to our story, when I start with Jesus, in Genesis also, but it says, not good that man should be alone. The Amplified says, it's not sufficient or satisfactory that man would be all alone. Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. If they lie down together, they have heat, but who can warm when you're all alone? Jesus sent his disciples out 2 by 2. You think about it. And so I close with the story of Jesus right here. Here's Jesus Christ. You think about it. Here he is made in the image of, he's God in the flesh. Here he is. The Bible says, and he takes with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee and began to show grief and distress of mind and was deeply depressed. The horror about what he's about ready to face was building up. And he says to his friends, my soul is crushed by sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and watch with me. He returns later to find his closest friends asleep. And honestly, it's probably one of the loneliest moments in his life. And he comes back and he says to them 3 times, couldn't you watch with me 1 hour? You can almost feel, I wanted your friendship. I wanted you guys awake. Couldn't you watch with me? Just 1 hour. He was saying to them, really, I needed you. So here he is, Christ, the Son of God, was communicating with the Father, number 1. Number 2, but he was still fully human with the emotions of a man, and he had a deep need for human companionship. He not only asked the disciples to stay with him, he periodically checked on them to make sure they were still there and at least awake. Well, they were there, they weren't awake. So I end with what I started with, that's choosing connection. And he took along with those, the disciples, Peter and 2 sons. And so that's the choice everyone has to, you have to make it, you have to have in your life. As you live your life, you hit these crises, hit these walls of difficulty and problems, being overwhelmed. You got to be taking someone along with you. And the rewards of being connected are just fuel with lower stress, better health, better resilience, and more happiness. And let me share this story with you, and I close with this illustration. It's a true story of a husband and wife. And it illustrates how relationships affect us more than we ever even think. This was the story of a man and his wife who survived the Bataan Death March. They said surviving the Bataan Death March after the Japanese stuffed them into POW camps, horrible conditions, hot, humid, starving because they had been fed stale rice, mistreated by the guards, often beaten horrifically on the spot. Beheadings took place in this camp on a regular basis for the minor infractions. Under these conditions in this POW camp, the survival rate was 50-50 at very best. But only the only people that survived, they found out were people that had a friend there. In this camp, there was an army captain that everyone liked. He brought bridge to his buddies. He could tell all kinds of stories about where he used to work in San Francisco. He always made the load lighter for everyone around him. His strength came from his relationship that he had with his wife. He had married a Filipino girl prior to the invasion, and she became his buddy. But when the invasion took place, both of them were placed in prison. Apparently, through the Filipino underground resistance, he was able to communicate with his wife back and forth while they were both in prison. But one day, word came to him that his wife suffered finally a mental breakdown. She had been dragged off what they called the psych ward, and no one ever returned from the psych ward. When he found that out, when the captain received the news, he crumbled. And 2 days later, he simply died. Until that time, he was fine. His wife died, and when she died, something inside him died. That's the closeness of human relationships that people have no idea that you bow your heads. Every head bowed, every eye closed, please. Connection is a chosen course. You must take time to establish connections. Maybe you don't have any. Or maybe you need to reestablish connection with your wife or your husband, or it could be a brother or a sister, but somebody. Or maybe you haven't had any real strong connections. Maybe your only connections you have been on social media. And you say, you know what, I need to start building connections. But let me get to this point. I wonder how many here suffer from things that you're afraid you're going to admit. You struggle with depression, but you won't say much about it, loneliness. Whatever it might be, the stigma stops you from asking for help. So my challenge to all of us this morning, if you're here, that you would start by giving it to God. That you would start by coming to this altar and giving it to God. And number two, you would take time to look around you and tell the people that love you, tell them what's going on. You're here this morning and you say, you know what, Pastor, you opened my eyes to some things. And some of you, God's talking to you about what I just said. Just raise your hand. Just raise your hand. Yes, 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 yes. God's talking to you. Yes. You know, there's some here this morning that have really no connection, no close connections. Everything's pretty superficial. Jesus, critical moment in his life, he said, I'm not going to go alone in this. You can't go alone. Jesus was Jesus. He understood that he still needed someone. How much more do we need people? You were not meant to live. God said himself, this is not good that man is all alone. It's not good. And this morning, some of you see, I've got so much inside of me, Pastor. I'm challenging you this morning. You come to this altar and say, I'm giving it to God. I'm not hiding this anymore. I need help. I'm talking to my mom, my dad, whoever it might be, whatever it might be. These are my thoughts. Robin Williams' wife said, the terrorist in my husband's mind. There's a terrorist in your mind. It's okay. You're not crazy. It's okay. You're here this morning, maybe you're not right with God at all. You're not right with the Lord. You say, I just want to give my life to Christ. Recommit my life. Why don't you raise your hand if that's you? I see that hand. Anybody else? I want to give my life to Christ. I'm not saved. I'm not right with God. Maybe you're a backslider. Raise your hand. Let's all stand. These altars are open. Just come and find a place to pray, please. Let God help us. Let God strengthen us. Help your marriage. Help your